Hey everybody, Tim here in the shop again. Wanted to talk for just a minute today about every woodworker's favorite subject, sanding. I use a good bit of sandpaper, and years ago I saw this little jig somewhere for cutting sandpaper. And it's not my idea. If I could remember where I saw it, I would give credit to who I got the idea from, but unfortunately I can't remember where I saw it, and I think that's the only place that I've ever saw it, was that one place. But when I seen it, I thought, man, that's a great idea. I got to try that. 'Cause I've tried about all the different kinds of cutting, all the different kinds of ways of cutting sandpaper, and never sheet sandpaper, and none of them worked very well at all for me until I found this. But I wanted to share this with you today, and I do as much power sanding as possible, and I've got a wall full of sanders over here to try to make our least favorite thing to do as woodworkers, try to make it as less painful as possible. But there's just some things that you can't power sand, and for that I use wet dry paper, and probably half the time I wet sand, half the time I dry sand. But I don't use the regular wood working sandpaper. I use wet dry for all of it because, like I said, I do probably 50% wet sanding. So I'm going to get the camera at a different angle here, try to get a close-up of this and share this little jig with you. Was talking here maybe a month ago or so with Lyle Jameson about this. I was watched one of his videos on how he cut sandpaper, and he does his in the fourth of a sheet. But for me, as a wood turner mainly, that's just, the quarter sheets are too big. I like something smaller than that, and I think what I cut it into is 1/16 of a sheet, but we'll look at that here in just a second. Alright, stay with me. Okay guys, start with, I'll show you what I use to put my sandpaper in, keep it in. And that's these little cigarette boxes I found at the local tobacco store. And they're just right for the size that I cut my sandpaper into. And I've got these for quite a few different grits. I've got 3 of them out here today. Excuse me. I was about to cut some sandpaper, and these are the grits that I needed, so I just brought these 3 boxes with me. But I buy the regular, usually 3M wet dry sandpaper. I usually get it at my local auto parts store, and that's what I use for all my hand sanding. Here's my sandpaper cutting jig. Hopefully this is showing up well enough in the camera. But it's just an old piece of countertop, and I measured my sheet of sandpaper and decided what size I wanted my cut pieces to be, and I put this on the table saw and cut grooves in it for the to make the different cuts. This piece on the side is just there to put the sandpaper up against, to keep it square with the lines that I've got cut in it. So let me make sure that's in frame okay. Yeah, pretty good maybe. But And I use a utility knife to cut the sandpaper with, and you might think, well, that'll dull that utility knife in no time, but actually the blades last a pretty long time cutting sandpaper, and it's so quick. I can't remember how many it is this divides up into, but I'll just go over that, show you that here. But I had my slots marked on there, and which cut to make first and which groove to make, and I don't cut it up off enough to remember. Okay, that's the third groove. So I usually have to recheck to make sure that I cut it, use the right slot. The first one is for if you wanted to do 1 inch like the sandpaper rolls like this. If you wanted to do 1 inch strips, you could cut you a slot for 1 inch, which I've done, and I've used the 1 inch, but I like, that tool rest in the rib felt good. I like something a little wider than 1 inch usually, but you put your sandpaper up here, get the groove that you want, hold it down with your left hand, and I usually keep my fingers under the utility knife, pushing down on it to keep the sandpaper from trying to bulk up. And I cut it long ways first. Okay, so that divides up into 4 equal size strips in that width. And then I turn the sandpaper this way, and I get 4 pieces from this direction. So this, I mean, it's not as fast, quite as fast talking about it and trying to do it at the same time. But 4, 8, so that'll be 16 pieces out of 1 sheet of sandpaper. And guys, if you want a good finish, don't use dull sandpaper. You know, we keep our cutting tools sharp as a razor, but when it comes to sandpaper, we want to try to set and sand and sand and sand, and with worn out sandpaper, and you're not going to get a good finish that way. So, you know, sandpaper really is cheap. I'm no mathematician for sure, but I don't know, these sheets of sandpaper cost maybe $1 a piece, $1.50 a piece. Divide that into 16, y'all can do the math. I'm not even going to attempt it, but you know, that's very little. So when one starts getting dull, toss it and grab another one. And especially with this cutting jig, it makes cutting it up so quick and easy. You know, like I was saying, Lyle Jameson uses quarter sheets, and his method for cutting it up is pretty quick. But he's got a quarter of a sheet, you know, to have to turn and twist and try to keep a sharp part of the sandpaper. With these little 1/16 of a sheet pieces, you know, I usually use it one direction, then use it in the other direction when I'm sanding on the lathe, and then toss it and grab another one. You know, that way it just helps keep good sharp sandpaper all the time. But you know, it only takes just a minute to cut up a sheet of sandpaper, especially if you're not talking to a camera like I'm doing. Oh. Like I said, these These fit right in one of these little cigarette packs that you can keep. You know, it keeps them organized and keeps your grits separated. And I always take a Sharpie, since after you cut it up, you don't have your numbers on every piece. Like this one here still got the 220 on it. But I always take a Sharpie and mark the grit on the back of each one of them. That way if you set it down, if you got 2 or 3 out and you set one of them down, get distracted, somebody calls on the phone or something, and you go back and you can't remember which one was which. That way you don't get them mixed up. Don't get your grits mixed up. But that's my little sandpaper cutting jig. And like I said, real easy to make. Just figure out your measurements for your cutting grooves. And my cutting grooves are probably, turn that up for you, hopefully you can see the edge of it. Mine are probably a good 1/4 of an inch deep. And actually I cut mine too deep. About 1/8 of an inch groove is plenty, all that you need. Show you one more thing here. With having them as deep as I've got mine, sometimes the pressure of the blade going through there can try to push the sandpaper down in the groove. Well, of course it wouldn't work on camera. But the groove doesn't need to be very deep. 1/4 of an inch would be plenty. But just set your rib fence up on your table saw to cut the grooves at the right dimension that you want your sandpaper cut. And the little board on the side is a heck of a lot better than not having it and trying to line it up, push your fingers up against it or something to make sure that your measurement is accurate every time. So I'll cut a few more here. I try to keep them lined up pretty well square with the grooves, but they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be roughly the same size, which they will be with using the groove to cut your paper. But anyway, it's that quick. Hope this tip helps some of you. Don't use dull sandpaper. Alright guys, I appreciate you watching. Please, if you enjoy the videos, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you see something that you like, if you learn something. It sure helps a fellow feel good about what he's doing, about sharing this kind of stuff, these tips and stuff, when people comment and let him know that it was a help to him. So everybody have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.